Let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks. We give thanks for all that is and all that isn't, all that was and all that wasn't, all that will be and all that won't be. We give thanks. As we offer our thanks, regardless of the conditions that surround us, we feel ourselves expand. We feel ourselves connect. We feel ourselves vitalized, enlivened. And as we consider those in our experience that seem to have a need for this awareness of gratitude, we hold them in mind and we see them filled with your love. We see them enlightened with the opportunities that they have to give thanks. And in that extension, we are blessed. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Deeper into the wilderness. Who wants to go further into the wilderness? Last week we ventured into the wilderness. The book by Robert Brumet has been our navigational aid in this journey. We talked about the ending a couple of weeks ago. Last week we talked about the void. Next week we're going to talk about new beginnings, but this week I'd like to spend a little bit more time exploring the void. The opportunity that we have in the void, the opportunity we have is change. That is optional. It's optional to the extent that when we have the opportunity to look upon our experience, our change of experience from that to what will be, or maybe from your perspective, that to that which will be, we have the opportunity to realize that our encounter with this area that we call the void, that Robert Brumet calls the void, is really rich in opportunity for growth, for understanding, for a deepening of our relationship with the all that is all, and including the all that includes all of you. So that process of consciously entering into the void and allowing ourselves to be nurtured by it. While it may seem that we are entering a space that is devastation because it is different from what we're familiar with over here, from what we're familiar with. Yet this movement through the void into the new beginnings is hearkening a new beginning that is going to be rich in experience, can be rich in experience. But in leaving behind that which we are familiar, that with which we're familiar, provides us an opportunity for grieving, right? I mean, we're used to this, we're familiar with this, we have all of our life is set up around this, our relationships perhaps are affected by this. And so as we enter into this space, this emptiness, if you will, some of that's not going to be carried with us. Some of that's not going to come with us. Some of that is going to be left behind. And indeed, as we enter the void, our relationships may change. because our relationships, to one extent or another, may be dependent upon that which was. And that can be scary. It can give us a sense of loneliness and the grief that we are starting to realize because of the absence of that can be profound. It can be very substantial. At the same time, well, Robert Brumet offered us this in Finding Yourself in Transition. In order to become who we really are, no, that didn't work. Okay, let's try this again. In order to become who we really are, we must let go of who we are not. In letting go of who we are not, we enter into the experience of nothingness, of non-being. In allowing ourselves to have the experience of non-being, we come more fully into our true being. The void is a passageway to becoming truly alive and fully awake. As Lao Tzu has written, to die but not to perish is to be eternally present. To die to that which was, yet not to perish, is to be eternally present. You know, there's something I ran across this week that was interesting. I often confuse, in my own mind, I confuse my thoughts with my feelings. And I've long considered feelings to be a tool for being present. To pay attention to our feelings is a tool for being present. But I ran across this passage this week that said that the difference between thoughts and feelings are thoughts are activities in mind. Feelings are activities in body. And that for me was, oh, well, duh, yes, of course. Feelings are indeed about sensation. But those feelings are not just touch, feel, smell, and so on, but also deep-seated feelings. We have the nervousness in our gut, right? When we are encountering a time of tribulation, a time of challenge. We have a feeling in our heart as we are holding that 3-year-old who is smiling and say, "I love you, Grandpa," right? We have that feeling of anxiety that's felt here, but it can also be felt elsewhere in our body. The point is that when we are in touch with our feelings, we are present in the now. We can remember our feelings, but all we're doing is we're recalling what that sensation was, and we're reliving that sensation, but in the now. And so the opportunity for us to pay attention to our feelings in the void is a way to bring us right here, present in the void. So one of the things that we can do to ensure that we don't wander back into the way it was and that which we are transitioning out of is to pay attention to our feelings. And those feelings can be significant. Anxiety is often one of those feelings. Disorientation is one of those feelings, feeling lost. I remember when we moved back to Lee Summit, Missouri, for ministerial school. There was 3 months or so of disorientation because I wasn't familiar with the geography. I couldn't remember how to get to the grocery store, right? I couldn't. I could remember, thank God, how to get to school because I had to be there on time. That was a stretch for me, but nonetheless, the feelings that I had during those first 3 months, being back in a suburb of Kansas City, was one of how do I get there? And that feeling of disorientation is truly a bodily feeling. It's not just a mental feeling. So paying attention to how we feel is an important aspect of managing the void. There is a passage that I ran across this week by Francis Weller. Francis Weller is a psychologist. He is one that deals a great deal with grief, and he works with Commonweal in their healing seminars. But Francis Weller had an interview in Sun magazine back in 2015, and he said the work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by both of them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I only carry grief, I'll bend towards cynicism and despair. If I only have gratitude, I'll become saccharine and won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. Interesting. So we've got grief in one hand, and we've got gratitude in the other. And to feel how those feelings are, it's kind of like we're being stretched, we're being extended. The envelope is expanding. To feel the grief on this hand and to really feel the grief is a way to soften the heart, to allow us to be more compassionate. Yet gratitude is that which is going to allow us to move away from cynicism. It's going to allow us to move out of the gray darkness of grief and into a more ebullient life. So we have the opportunity with grief in one hand and gratitude in the other to develop in this space of the void, grieving for that which was, but also gratitude for that which was. Because that which was a very significant building block. It provided the building blocks for who we are now. Right? And who we are now is something to celebrate. It's not something to moan or bemoan, but rather it is something to celebrate. We are here now. We are on this precipice of our greater good, of our greater awareness, of our, if you will, enlightenment, because of the path that we have traveled in the past. So having grief for that which we have lost, but also gratitude for that which we have, that has nourished us, has built us, has brought us into the state where we are now. So in the void, we are often wanting to get through it, right? Because this is uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar. It's not the territory that I am used to traveling. So we want to get through it as much as possible into the new beginning. And as I mentioned last week, and we'll look at the list here again, but as I mentioned last week, Robert Brumet suggests that we not try to push the river, that we not try to get through this grief too soon. Let us experience this grief for all of the nurturing it can offer us. Allow this grief that we have for that which was to be a means of providing suppleness to our heart. So, one of the things that we have in the void is this opportunity for change. But the opportunity for change is only going to come if we are willing, if we're willing to allow that growth to occur. The transition that we see in the story of the Hebrews coming out of Egypt into Canaan. Interesting that one could say that transition began when Moses, being a shepherd in the wilderness, happened upon a burning bush. And that burning bush was not consumed. As we experience, as we come into the void, we may feel ourselves in flames, grieving, disoriented, not sure of what is going to happen. And those unknowns can be terrible. They can be very hard. Yet, if we pay attention, we will not be consumed by that. We will grow from that. What was the first command that God gave to Moses when Moses looked upon the burning bush? Do you remember? It was, take off the shoes from your feet, because the ground upon which you are standing is holy. So it is in the void. The void is a holy experience. It is one that we can use to expand our awareness of our relationship with each other and with God. And while grieving is a part of this void experience, it doesn't have to be the whole experience. As Weller offered us, that grieving and gratitude are aspects of the void that will allow us to stretch and to grow. There's in Francis Weller's book, one that actually we're going to be encountering here in several weeks. In his book, he offers this passage on the initiation. And the initiation is what we're talking about in the void. The void is an initiation. All initiatory, and he refers to this in the context of sickness and illness, but it's applicable generally for the void. All initiatory events, like those still held in living cultures, take one into an unknown and unshaped world. Here, nothing is as it was, nor is it intended to be. It is a time of shedding and endings. The familiar world is left behind, and we exist at the edge of something without shape. It is a place of radical change. In other words, the identity we had known for our entire life has just been dissolved. We can no longer lean on what we know for a feeling of stability. Things teeter and shake. We feel adrift on unfamiliar seas. And as in all true initiations, we fear that we will sink into the waters of death. When we are in the grips of illness, as an example, a major focus in our mind is the hope of getting back to where we were before this illness began. But we are not meant to go back. Like the man above, I'll refer to this in a moment, like the man who resisted hearing what his heart was saying, we must recognize that we have been uprooted by our cancer, our heart attack, or our depression, and we have been set down on some new shore. Like any true ritual process, we are meant to come out of the experience deeply changed. The example that he was referring to was a client of his who was a Fortune 500 executive who had a heart attack, had been convalescing for a period of time, and was so anxious to get his vitality back so that he could go back to doing what he was doing. And after several sessions of this executive saying, or this past executive saying what his objectives were, Weller asked him, "Are you not aware that that which you are striving to return to was that which caused you to be where you are today. And this is an important lesson for us, that the transition from that which was into that which is going to be in this void is a transition that is necessary. Now, this transition may be one that you initiated on your own, but you initiated it because you saw a reason for change. Either it was uncomfortable, or it was stifling, or it was obviously a dead end of some sort or another. You may have chosen that change. On the other hand, you may have been in a situation that there was no choice. You were thrust into the void without your permission, if you will. Like the executive in the Fortune 500 company, he was thrust into the void because of the stress of the job causing him his ill health. And so when that question was asked, it caused the executive to step back and say, do I want to go back to that, which caused this, or do I want to take the opportunity to move on to something new? And that is truly a choice that we have whenever we are in the void. And oftentimes we think we want to go back. And it's difficult, if not impossible, to go back because things have changed. Right out from under you, things have changed. You are standing on new ground. But that ground is holy ground. This experience in the void is a sacred experience. And if you pay attention to this experience, then you will be stretched. You will be enlivened. You will be lifted into a greater awareness. And what that new beginning is going to be, who knows what that new beginning is going to be. But one thing for sure is that the void that we are in right now is a sacred experience. And if we treat it as such, we will be transformed. And that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of this transition, is transformation. So we have the opportunity to take advantage of this or not. You may recall, Robert Brumet offered this list that when in the void, embrace the experience fully. Avoid making long-term commitments. Don't try to push the river. Maintain your spiritual practice of meditation and prayer. Maintain your physical health with good nutrition and exercise. Pay attention to your dreams. Maintain a daily journal, including the dreams. Develop a support system. Create some type of ritual to symbolize your passage from the old to the new. And have faith that the process is working to your ultimate good. Because you are standing on holy ground. And the God that is loving, the God that is all of creation, the God that is fully aware, if we could anthropomorphize, easy for you to say, anthropomorphize God. But if we want to make God like man, we can give these characteristics of God being aware. But in the understanding that God is consciousness itself is striving for the lifting and the expansion and the good of all of creation, including you and 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 me. All of us are on the track for greater good if we allow it. If we see that our experience, regardless of where we are, regardless of when we are, if we see our experience as a holy experience. And the void is a perfect opportunity for us to experience that, if we choose. We'll have our meditation. As we come in the stillness of this moment, we allow ourselves to sit in this quiet space. we declare that this moment in which we are sitting is a holy moment. It is filled with glory. It is an expression of the sacred. It is the playground in which our relationship with God and with each other matures. In this holy moment, we allow ourselves to grieve that which we choose to grieve. Relationships changed. Situations changed. And it is good. It is useful. It is empowering for us to grieve that which has changed. And in this holy moment, it is also appropriate that we give thanks for that which was. That which was the building blocks of who I am. That which was the elements of my experience that brought me to this point in consciousness. That which was nurtured me, stretched me, deepened my understanding. For all of this and more, we give thanks. We appreciate what was. And in the grieving and gratitude, we open ourselves to growing into the greater experience that is to be. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. We pay attention to our feelings in this moment. We feel the burden lightened. We feel the baggage no longer necessary for our sustenance left behind. We are freer. We are lighter. We are brighter. Breathing in and breathing out. Our posture changes. Our countenance changes. Our thought stream changes. As we come back into this time and space, let us come back sharing the words of Alleluia.